feel good. Okay. So anyway, I felt good the other day, and I was invited to a holiday Christmas party, and we were supposed to bring a white elephant gift. And you know what those white elephant gifts are, right? They're the second or the third rate gifts. They're the gifts that we cannot wait to give away. We want to offload them, and hopefully to in-laws. They're the gifts that when we either purchase because we had taken temporary leave of our senses. So these would be things like neon socks or pink flamingo for the fellas, pink flamingo boxer shorts, those chia pets, right? Anything from Ronco or K-Tel. You know, we cannot wait to get rid of them. They're second or third rate gifts. They're thrift store rejects. They're outcasts, right? And the purpose of these types of gifts are like the fruitcake. It's just to get rid of them as quickly as possible, hopefully on some unsuspecting souls. And that when we are at a party and people are giving these white elephant gifts and we're laughing, I think, secretly because we are so happy we didn't get it. Until it comes our turn. And then what do? Well, anyway, that's a form of gift giving. But what we're going to talk about this morning is God's gift-giving patterns. And I could tell you that God does not give white elephant gifts. Spirit's gifts are first-rate. They are not the second and the third-rate gifts that we want to cast off, that we hide in the closet. However, because God's gifts are what? The gift of life, of love, of joy, the gift of harmony, the gift of compassion, of understanding. God's gift is the gift of wholeness. God's gift, we talked about earlier, is a gift really of possibilities, of probabilities, of light, of delight, of harmony. But sometimes, so even though these are the gifts of spirit, every day, constantly, 24/7, 366, and how many seconds in a year?
525,600 minutes.
Okay, every second of every day of every year, thank you. We are given these gifts, but sometimes we treat them as if they are white elephant gifts. So we maybe either don't even receive them at all. Oh, no, I'm not good enough. That Mac Daddy of all false assumptions, I'm not worthy. I'll receive that gift when I lose weight, when I get into a relationship, when I feel better about myself, when I'm happy. I'm not ready. So we don't even receive it sometimes. And sometimes when we do receive them, with these wonderful gifts, these first-rate gifts, we act as if they're not that important. We sweep them under the carpet. So one of the main gifts, one of the best gifts of spirit, especially it's all the time, but we're going to talk about it this time of year, is the gift of love, right? Love is what God is. God is love. And if there's only one thing, and that one thing is God, spirit, divine mind, source energy, infinite intelligence, whatever we want to call it, if God is love, and there's only one thing, and that one thing is it, then we must be part of that itness, and therefore we must be love. It's a mathematical equation. If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Therefore, we equal love. And so we want to dive in and recognize and show up in life and give that gift of love. Give that gift of ourselves. Give that first-rate gift, not the cast-off gifts. And so I have a story that I'd like to share about the gift of love. I've shared it before, and it's one of my favorites as well. So you know, whenever the idea of the topic of conversation about holiday pageants come up in a particular Midwestern town, you are sure to hear the name Wallace Perling. So you see, Wally was 9 years old that year, 9 and in the second grade. He should have been in the 4th grade, but Wally is a little slow. He's slow in the athletic, in the physical department. He was a little bit slow, clearly, as well in the intellectual department. But he was a nice boy, and he was well liked by the kids. But they didn't really want him to play in his game, with the games. So he stood a lot on the sidelines. And he didn't sulk on the sidelines. He was a very helpful boy. And but especially if it came to the other children that it was important to win a game, for sure Wally would be excluded. But yet, he was a protector of the underdog, of the young kids. And often you'd hear Wally, if those older boys were not wanting to include the younger kids, Wally would be the one to stick up for them and say, well, can't they join in? They're not hurting anything. Wally was helpful. He was kind. He was just a joy. He was well liked, but slow and big for his age. So when it came time for the Christmas play, the nativity play that year, Wally had ideas that he'd like to be the shepherd with a flute. But the play's director, Miss Lombard, had other ideas, because it was Wally after all. And so Wally was a big kid, and so she reasoned two things. That since the innkeeper didn't have many lines, that would be a good role for Wally, especially as well because he was a big kid. And so it would be a little bit more impactful when he has to reject and turn Joseph away from the inn. So the magical night happened, and as you can imagine, the audience is filled with a partisan crowd, right? All, really, their hearts are on their sleeves, just cheering on their kids and the people that they've known. And there's the kids all backstage, the usual regalia of crowns and phony beards and costumes. And in it all was Wally, who was so caught up in the magic of the evening. So caught up, in fact, later from the sidelines, Miss Lombard would have to check in on Wally for fear that he would go on stage before his cue came. It was a magical night. And then on comes Joseph to the scene. And he knocks on the heavy wooden prop door. Knock, knock, knock. And here's the innkeeper, Wally, opens the door and says, "What do you want?" And Joseph says, "We've come from far away and we'd like a room." And the innkeeper says, "Go away. There is no room for you here at the inn," in a very brusque, deep for his age voice. And Joseph said, "Well, please, we've come far away. We've knocked everywhere. Don't you have a room for us?" And the innkeeper once again says, "No, go elsewhere. There is no room for you here at the inn." He was looking straight ahead. He was the picture of perfection of that innkeeper. And then Joseph continues and he says, "Please, innkeeper, we have come far, and this is my wife Mary. And she is heavy with child. Isn't there a place in your inn, even in some little corner, that we might have rest?" And it was at that time that the innkeeper looked down for the very first time. And he looked at Mary, heavy and laden with child. And there was a very uncomfortable and long silence. So long, in fact, that a lot of the audience members were getting a little bit embarrassed and uncomfortable themselves. And from the back of the room, you could hear behind the stage, "No, be gone." And so the innkeeper says, "No, be gone." But instead of turning back into the inn, the innkeeper stayed as he watched Mary lay her head on Joseph's shoulder and Joseph putting his arm around Mary's shoulder. He watched them trudge off. And then the innkeeper, and this is where this Christmas pageant became different from all the other Christmas pageants. And the innkeeper said, "Joseph, Joseph, don't go, don't go. Bring Mary back. She can have my room." And so some people thought the play was ruined. But many others, many others, thought it was the most Christmas of all the Christmas pageants they had ever seen. And so what was that gift that Wallace Purling brought to life that day? It was the gift of love. That in the midst of a bad situation, in the midst of what seemed like a crisis, what seemed like despair, he brought forth within himself that gift that is so part of who we are, the gift of love. And that gift of love is not a second-rate gift. It is a first-rate gift. It's no cast-off. It's not a white elephant. It is the part and parcel, the highest that we can give. It is given to us freely, constantly, and it is right where we are. We don't have to go searching far and wide to give that. Last week I talked about that we are the gift. And guess what? This week, it's the same. We're still the gift. We're still it. And so we can certainly buy first-rate gifts, material first-rate gifts. I love to receive those, and it's fun to buy them. But a better and a higher first-rate gift sometimes in any situation is us. We can be that gift of love and joy and harmony. And what happens, though, is we forget, don't we? We forget that right where we are, the infinite is. We forget that we're so connected. We forget that there's only one thing, and that one thing is God. That one thing is light and love and harmony. We forget. We think we're separate from it. We forget that that's who we are. And then when we forget, what happens is that we fill ourselves up sometimes with resentment, with envy, with jealousy, with anger, with fear, because we have forgotten that the first-rate gift of life and love, that gift of wonder and awesomeness, that gift of magnificence, that gift of being the darling of the divine, the beloved of the infinite, is always freely given. And we don't even have to beg. We don't even have to put it on our Christmas list. It's there for us. We just need to tap into it and to remember remember it. And we have lots of opportunities. We have lots of opportunities to step into that remembrance. We have an opportunity today. We don't need some external crisis to remind us to step into who we are. But we can certainly use that as a reminder to step into who we are. And we got a reminder of a horrific kind very recently. Another shooting. Now it could be for 3 or 27. But yet, how do we reconcile? Sometimes, well, I might talk up here and say, God is good. How do we reconcile within ourselves when we are seeing and observing some unspeakable tragedy, some horror of horrors? How do we reconcile in our mind and not turn away towards anger, towards resentment, towards fear that wants to perhaps bubble up? So it doesn't matter if it's happening in our world. It doesn't matter if it's happening in our life. Violence of any kind. And how many times, maybe it's not physical violence, but how many of us allow our own monkey minds, our own internal mind chatter, to kill off ideas of our dreams, to kill off ideas of joy? How many allow our own inner minds to succumb to ideas that are not life-affirming, but actually kind of life-defirming, whatever that would be, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I can't have what I want. Other people have it. I'm never in the right place at the right time. I never have any luck. Why bother trying? I never get the breaks. Is this life-affirming, or are we killing the very gift that is the gift within us? So any time that we can see any kind of physical violence, verbal violence, our own internal violence, it is a call to us to rise up into prayer. It's a call for us, it's our opportunity to rise up, to remember that who we are is love. Because where there is fear, fear is darkness. And the darkness cannot exist in the light of love. If we have our own darkness within us, it only lives because we have forgotten who we are. We have given it free rein in our mind. We have given over, perhaps, to those thoughts of fear, of anger, of resentment, of envy, of jealousy, of lack, of limitation, of feeling like we're in bondage to something. How many of us have that critical mind, so we have a goal? And perhaps the goal is, let's take something simple, that we want to meditate every day. And so we have good intentions. And we get up and the mind starts. This will be in our book, The Untethered Soul. It's a lot about our own internal talking that never ceases. So we want to meditate, and so for some reason we talk ourselves out of it because, our own mind speaks our own language, knows exactly what buttons to push, exactly what to do to help us procrastinate, right? And so we procrastinate. And then what happens? Oh, whatever happens, you have your own voices. But we allow that voice of procrastination, of not, then it's a pattern. I never do what I say I'm going to do. So then we have an idea that comes along, and what happens? We're so used to beating ourselves up, internal violence, we're so used to beating ourselves up that we don't even think that we're going to achieve that next dream or that next goal. Why? Because 150 years ago, we didn't do what we said we were going to do. And we have that voice that's with us all the time. And when that voice is there, we have forgotten. We have forgotten that other voice, that still small voice, that whisper of the beloved, that is always whispering, that is never apart from us either. But we haven't trained ourselves to listen, that tells us that we are okay, that not only are we okay, we're more than okay, that we are the darling of the divine, that we are life itself, that we are here experiencing the beautiful tapestry that we're creating called our life, but it is part of the one life, of the infinite. And so we want to remember more and more and more and more to step into that gift of the divine, the gift of spirit, the gifts of joy, peace, power, understanding, compassion, the gift of love, the gift of light, the gift of enjoyment, the gift of vitality, the gift of harmony, the gift of confidence, the gift of connection, the gift of wholeness, the gift of oneness. These are all the gifts of spirit that are coming at us continuously. We just need to line up with that. And we could take this wonderful time of year, because this is when it is the darkest, the longest. This is the dark part of the year. But we know that the light is imminent. We know that. And so if we're going through a dark period, if we're experiencing something that is seemingly challenging for us, well, not seemingly, it is challenging. Say it like it is. I mean, I'm okay with that. We're having a challenge. We're having trouble. Let's say we listen to the news. We're having trouble reconciling our minds. It's challenging. Some events in our personal lives, some events in our external lives will open our hearts a little bit more. They're a little challenging. Our hearts might be open and raw. And that's okay. But we know that as we claim the gifts of spirit, as we move into a sense of love, we can rise up and we can become that flame, that light that is imminent. It is only a temporary stopping point. Any kind of depression or despair that we might feel. Any tragedy that we might experience. I was watching years ago a show on TV, and it was a scientist that said in the animal kingdom, fear turns into attack in 60 seconds. Where are we experiencing fear in our lives? Are we afraid of success? Are we afraid to express our own greatness? Are we afraid that we're not going to be accepted? Are we afraid to really step into our fullness? Are we afraid to open up our hearts to let love in? Are we afraid to be authentic because we're afraid that people won't understand us or that we're going to be rejected? And then, let's say we are afraid of that. Then when we are rejected or we don't have any friends, then that turns into anger. But who set it up? It's because we were initially afraid. We did not step into our glory, into our gifts, into our joy, into our love, and into our life. So, Dr. Ernest Holmes, founder of religious science, here's what he says. He says, whenever we find ourselves brooding over a fear or entertaining an anxiety, we must begin to do something about it. We must turn to the power greater than we are that put us here and learn to have confidence in this power. We have confidence in a lot of other things, don't we? We need to have confidence in God, in the power for good in the universe. And we need to confess our fears to ourselves before this power and then reach just a little higher. Reach just a little higher in faith than fear. We will discover a miracle taking place. Fears will begin to recede until finally they appear only as a speck on the horizon of our minds. And then they just seem to walk over the horizon and disappear entirely, like the darkness fleeing from the light. So we need to rise up, have a little more faith than fear. Just a little more. Just a little more. Faith that there is only one thing. Faith that this life, God, infinite intelligence, divine mind, source energy, whatever it is, again, as I say, what we want to call it, Henry, doesn't matter, that there is this thing that we can have confidence and faith a little bit more, that there is something in charge, that God knows how to run the universe, that there is a power for good that knows how to create, that we just need to align ourselves with it, that we know our job is to focus on what it is that we want. And so when we are in the midst of a crisis, or in the midst of reacting to something around us, where is our focus? Is our focus on the darkness? Is our focus on the fear? Is our focus on the anger? Is our focus on what's wrong? And then we wonder why we're not experiencing what's right? No, we need to focus on the love. If it's a strike, focus on the first responders. Focus on what we can do, how we can pray, how we can rise up in our own minds to be that beacon of light, that we can have a little more faith in what's going on than a little more fear. And see if that doesn't make a world of difference in our own lives, in stepping into our own possibilities, into our own new possibility paradigm. There's a Sufi teaching that says this. He says, past the seeker, as he prayed, came a crippled and a beggar and the beaten. And seeing them, he cried, "Great God, how is it that a loving creator can see such things and yet do nothing about them?" And God said, "I did do something. I made you." And that's what we're here for. That is really one of the things we can remember. God made us to step up. God made us to experience love. God made us to be that healing agent. God made us to be a light because God is us. And God is all of us. And God is experiencing itself, which is good, which is wholeness, which is vitality, which is delight, which is harmony, which is understanding, compassion, goodness, fairness, honesty, rejoicing. So many times we are stuck in the tragedy of our drama that we forget to be rejoicing in our comedy. We forget to say to ourselves, "I feel good." We can feel good regardless of what's going on around us. It's a choice. I feel good. God is where I am regardless of what I'm seeing. God is right here. I feel good. Say that with me. I feel good. And embrace those gifts What can we do today to pass on and be that gift of love? What can we do today to be the gift of safety? What can we do today to be the gift of joy? What can we do today to step into that greater awareness of our own unlimited possibilities? We can decide moment by moment by moment to say, I feel good and mean it, and step into a little bit more faith than fear and receive those and be those first-rate gifts. And so it is.
So it is.